Good morning. That's okay. My name's Ajay. I'm from a Norwegian company called Norigin Media, and
It's Izar Olafsen. I'm coming from Thomson Video Networks.
today we're speaking a little bit of the cloud, the most ambiguous word that I've heard in this conference in the last 2 years, and we're going to keep it simple because we just want to understand what the cloud really is, because nobody seems to have one single story. Before we do a quick introduction as to why we're doing this, I come from a company called Norigin Media. It's a TV everywhere company. We're based in Norway. We provide OTT solutions. The solutions include both managing video on the cloud as well as graphical UI, UX experiences on the cloud as well.
And Thomson Video Networks is a provider of the infrastructure for OTT services. We have over 20 years experience in the field of delivering video to a large number of organizations out there. We cover all networks, so the addition of cloud, TV, and streaming side came quite natural to us. We're typically a business-to-business solution. We have a headquarters in France, and we are focusing on innovation like so many others around here.
Let's keep it simple. Whenever I speak to anyone about cloud TV, cloud hosting, people, I just wonder what they're thinking. They're thinking about real clouds. Clearly, they're not thinking about what they should be or what they really are. They're not thinking about its limitations. They're not thinking about its practical elements of what it really is. So I'm actually wondering if people are actually thinking about clouds, or are they thinking about certain brands, which I think pretty much eliminates what cloud really is. We're just trying to say that some people might think it's Amazon and Azure. Azure is going to speak at 2 o'clock, and I'm really looking forward to how they present themselves. But I myself, sometimes I think about Jennifer Lawrence, and I think about iCloud, and I think about pictures being stolen, and we don't have the best of things to say about them. At the end of the day, it's just a kaleidoscope of servers, hardwares, a bunch of wires, and a beautiful, amazing-looking data center, which RA best knows about.
So if you then agree that a cloud solution or a cloud is a collection of servers, well, what does that actually mean when you want to deliver then a professional, high-quality video service? So what we said was, OK, the cloud is a collection of hardware. It's a number of servers sitting there somewhere. So how do you utilize it? Well, the first thing you will need is a typical broadcast interface, so you can actually use the cloud. It's not just enough to have the service there. And you also then need to have some kind of video processing running on top of that. And the typical way of doing that is having a virtual layer, and then you're just spinning up servers as you need them, and you will then run the video compression on top of that. And that is where we're coming in Thomson Video Networks. We're trying to do this in a little bit more clever way. So first of all, you need to have the user interface, as I talked about. You also need to be able to spin these disk ups as you need to. So typically, if you're having extra services, that's the easy one. But what about if you have a failover or something like that? Then typically you will need something more on the cloud than what you're actually getting from just typical service. So what we have developed is a layer that sits on top of it that handles all of that kind of things, like failovers, spinning up new disks, sitting there for the operational interface, etc. And then you have the video compression sitting on top that is actually doing the job. Now, there's been a lot of talk about public clouds, and we also have then what we call the private cloud, which is something that you have inside your own premises. So you know that if you have certain services that you do run, and you have your own infrastructure, then you're having some kind more guaranteed of the quality of service you can deliver. You're having more certainties around the actual services that you are providing. But you can then also look at this as well, the downside with private clouds is that you will have to have your own infrastructure in-house. You could combine it also then with the public cloud, So if you're then looking at what we're offering is a bridge there where you can run the services either in-house if you have the capabilities, or you can combine it with the public cloud and therefore being able to scale it up.
I've been in the industry for about 10 years, and we've been doing hosting services, so I've used the word cloud simply because it's hosting. It's just synonymous for myself. Conventionally, and back in the day, we were thinking about cloud, we were thinking about a bunch of hardwares and software stackable with load balancers and the whole element of scalability, as long as it was not in your own controlled data center. I think the current understanding of a cloud is essentially a virtual, expansive data center, which allows you to scale up as per needs, to be efficient in terms of usability of such kind of architecture. And I think at the end of the day, a cloud architecture is just an architecture without any concerns of scalability, which is the core meaning of what cloud hosting really is. It could be of video, it could be of any kind of data services. At the end of the day, cloud hosting is pretty much hosting something with an elastic virtual element of itself. I'd like to just continue on the initial discussion about private and public cloud, and Ari spoke very well about how he sees the bridge between them. In terms of public and private cloud, at the end of the day, if you list what they really are and their key elements of themselves, a public cloud is more distributed, it's global, it's scalable, while a private cloud is more local, it's walled garden, it's within a single data center, it's more geographically located. It's public open internet versus a more secure, controlled environment that you're talking about in terms of a private cloud. We're talking about unrestricted scalability versus restricted scalability. This is what it at the end of the day is. We're talking about maybe 2 data centers in a private cloud somewhere in the middle of Oslo, or we're talking about Azure across maybe 3 larger data centers across Europe, which you'll never really know as to how many they have. Let's talk about TV and video, which is our expertise at the end of the day. We talk about video on demand, and people are talking about Amazon and Azure, where they're hosting amazing amounts of capabilities as far as hosting capacities are concerned. With video on demand, there's no constant traffic. There's a queue-based technology. Essentially, there's a workflow that needs to be based on a good amount of video clips that follows through a workflow which is encoding in the cloud. Ingestions to CDNs could be customized. You're talking about multiple integrations. Things can be done. Even on the traffic, it's limited costs simply because you're caching on the CDN as well. And this is the bigger concern when you're talking about the live TV part of it. Unlike video on demand, this is constant traffic. When you're talking about 10 to 15 live channels, if you're talking about HD, you're talking about incredible amount of data, which is constantly going into the cloud, which basically means commercially, if you look at it, my personal expectations of something like this should be more affordable. This is like a holiday home, which is expensive, which should be used based on absolute need, is my recommendation, personally at least. On the CDN side as well, it's constant again. There's data traffic that continuously goes through it and connects itself to CDNs, which you're paying pretty much by the second for every megabit. If you're talking HD content, you're talking a lot more. Essentially, they provide these things. In terms of public clouds, we're talking about no customized integrations in terms of acquiring these live feeds. They're on satellites, they're on RTMP push, they're coming from the north of France, they're coming from the south of Italy. You need to figure out how you get these live feeds and signals to the cloud. That has not been established in today's industry in 2014 as yet. So let's take live TV outside of the public cloud for the time being, because we know that they're doing video on demand. It's an established market. It's scalable. We're looking at people across the world using thousands of video content, which is being uploaded by the second. In terms of live TV, when you look at the customized requirements, you're looking at integrations from the satellites, feeds that you know that there's only one pretty source that comes from. We're talking about private cloud. It's more reliable. SLAs, a bigger part of what broadcast industries are more known for. We're talking about 99.79s, if you'd like. And such kind of services basically requires you to have a service that's more controlled, more in your own data center, if you may say so. We're talking about content transfer costs, which is more restrictive because it's not people, when they build an architecture in a private cloud, it's built with a certain element of capacity, and that capacity has been paid for, which means that you don't have constant traffic costs as well. But what we started this whole presentation off with was basically us saying that there's no real difference between a public and a private cloud. They pretty much are a bunch of servers. They do what they do. They have their pros and cons. And obviously enough, there's not one dissing the other. The best and perfect world in everyone's life is a hybrid world. Put them together, use them for what they're known for and what they're good for. Take the elements of what Ari used, he used the word bridge. I like to say overflow. I don't know which is positive. But the idea is put them together, use them for what they are. You can even use the overflow mechanism as something that our company uses ourselves, simply because when you have a limited scalability, you want to look at the bigger companies and you want to use their capacities for what they're meant for. For these things, you need to have idle capacity. You need to have these switchovers well tested. You need to have these things ready to go when you absolutely need them. We know that TV is overflowing without any kind of direction. And at the end of the day, things like cases like NPVR, things like, they're all going towards the cloud. The idea of selling boxes and knowing exactly what they do and being expansive and not being restricted is what we're talking about in terms of cloud. And this is where the industry is going, even in TV and video. And we hope this hybrid element is basically understood. And at the end of the day, the best of both worlds make sense to us. They both are the same. And it's just a commercial decision at the end of the day to see how you want to function with the cloud. Both of us have a relationship to Norway, and we say tusen takk, which is 1,000 thanks. Any questions? Oh.
Just curious to know if you've had any experience or any takeaway, I guess, so far on Google storage options as well and integrating them.
In terms of Google storage, it's taking a brand and a company. So in terms of, we'll just call it a public cloud, for instance. Like we've said, yes, we do have, and we totally believe in it because we're working on, I'll give you an example of hosting the content for BBC, which we did 10 years ago, and without telling us, they decided to promote it. Instead of expecting 2,000 concurrent sessions, we saw 200,000. It collapsed. And the idea is, what we were saying is it needs to be integrated, whether it's Google or if you've chosen Amazon or Azure. These are companies at the end of the day. And a public cloud could be anything. Bright Cove. Great. We both are exhibiting our services in Hall 14, and we're more than happy to talk about the industry because we love doing that. Thank you.
Thanks.